Hi, my name is Jeffro, and this is Digital Dominance, the podcast for service-based small business owners who are ready to seize the recognition and growth that their company deserves. You've worked hard to build a business you're proud of. Now it's time for Digital Domination. Welcome back to Digital Dominance. In today's episode, I'm joined by Pat Taggart, a filmmaker and storyteller who is changing the way businesses create video content. Pat is the founder and chief creative at Sky Blue Creative, where he takes a documentary-style approach to corporate video, helping organizations tell their stories without memorizing lines, reading from a teleprompter, or awkwardly staring into a lens. So we're going to dive into why unscripted video is so powerful, how to overcome the fear of putting yourself on camera, and what types of video content businesses should focus on to attract and engage with their audience. So welcome to the show, Pat.
Jeffro, I am a fan of Digital Dominance. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited for this conversation because video is not going away. We all know that. So we got to lean into it a little bit. And I'm curious to start, why do you believe unscripted video works best for businesses?
Well, I kind of stumbled upon that out of necessity. So started a wedding video business right out of school. I'm 22 and very quickly realized nobody gets married Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So I better find something to do with my time. And so I started creating what you would commonly call corporate video. And I would go in and meet these really engaging people running these very cool businesses. And then we would hit record and everything would completely fall apart. It looked like hostage videos and these people were sweating bullets and stumbling over their words. And I thought, my goodness, there has to be a better way. I better figure it out or I'm going to be awfully poor. And it really came down to two things. Number one, it was stop making people stare into the lens of the camera. It's very unnerving if you're not used to it, right? But secondly, and most importantly, stop telling people what to say. Because most people, when it comes to their business, can talk about it all day long. You can talk to potential customers, you can talk to employees or folks you're trying to recruit. But for whatever reason, when we say we're going to create video, it's like, okay, let's figure out exactly what we're going to say. I believe that's the wrong approach. I think that you need to get people in conversation, let them speak off the top of their head, let them be genuine and authentic, and then leave it to someone that knows how to edit to put that together into something that feels real.
Yeah. Well, maybe it comes down to there's a fear of like, okay, if I record this, it's permanent. In a conversation, I can always modify. If I, stumble, I can fix it or whatever. But I mean, you're not streaming this live. So of course you can always just do another take or edit it or whatever you need to do. So you got to get past that.
That's the thing. It's not live. It's not live. Right. And so you're not nervous when you go into a meeting, most likely, or when you talk to your team or when you're recruiting, and that's live, right? It happens one time. It's real time. But people are scared to death when they go to shoot video, and you could do it 15 times, and the world's only going to see the one that worked really well. So, man, it's like, it's where else could you be good 5% or 10% of the time, and that's considered a massive success.
Yeah. So what is the approach then now when you go in instead of sit down in front of the camera? Is it, here, talk to this person and I'm just going to record you from the side, or how do you figure that out?
This person is me, actually. And so I'm always sitting across from our clients. And one thing I need to make really clear is that unscripted doesn't mean unprepared. I would never suggest anybody just goes in and wings it without any real objectives in mind. With our clients, and I'm sure anybody else that does unscripted work kind of does the same thing, where you have to have a meeting and talk through what are our objectives. And I've always looked at video, Jeffro, as a tool. And so it needs to do one of two things. It needs to help you take advantage of an opportunity that you have, or it needs to help you solve a problem. And if it doesn't do either, then simply don't create video. It should do one of those two. And so really what you want to get really clear on is, what are your differentiators? Okay. Who's our audience? What do we want them to feel? And how can we work video into our flow? Maybe look at your website and say, man, it's all text and text is wonderful, but how do we create a really wonderfully choreographed dance between the text on our site and then video? How do we use video to set up? How do we use text to set up video? And you can do it. You can do it really elegantly. And I think that if you take a look at your site as a consumer and you say, man, is this inspiring? Am I really taking advantage of the technology that's available to really tell our story? Like, is this us? And if it's not, if you look at it and say, it doesn't really capture who we are, chances are it's just missing a couple really well done videos. And you have the opportunity to do that. But back to how it works, people talk to me and we kind of have a very clear idea of what we want to hit. And I think you have to take an all-inclusive approach with these, because there was definitely a time where someone would say, hey, Pat, we want a brand video. We want this 2 or 3 minute video. Let's go in and create that. And then we would just create and deliver that. And the client would be happy. I wouldn't be happy afterwards, because I'm looking at, an hour and a half of other really great footage that didn't make the cut, not because it wasn't great, because it didn't fit the kind of puzzle that we were trying to create. But man, it's so useful for LinkedIn posts or services videos or a million other things. And so now when we work with clients, it's like, hey, let's just have great conversations. Let's really get to the heart of who you are and what makes you different. And then let's take it back and not only create that like brand video front and center, but let's create kind of an entire library of content. That's what I would encourage your listeners to think about doing is if you're going to take the time, clean up, put on your favorite shirt, sit in front of the lights and the camera, man, just have great conversations and create as much as you can. Because honestly, with very little effort on the part of a company, if you have a creative that knows what they're doing, you can go from zero or next to zero video to best in class video in one day. It should only take one day for you and your team, and you could really go from zero to the best.
Yeah, and I want to zoom in on one thing you said real quick. If you have a creative who knows what they're doing, because you being the person across the table from them makes a difference from just another employee sitting there and saying, tell us about the new plan we're launching, right? That's going to be boring, but you know how to craft questions to draw out the gems that are going to do well on video.
Yeah. And the biggest thing is, I think people always try to hit them with like the most creative question you can. The questions most of the time are the most simple questions. My job, 99% of my job is just making people comfortable. That is my job because that's the biggest barrier, right? So I don't hold a list of questions because when you're holding a list of questions, inevitably the person sitting across from you who is nervous, they're wondering what's coming next. If you could just keep that eye contact, and if you can, for example, if they're not smiling, I will smile at you until you think I'm completely insane. I need to give you the energy that I want in return. And then little trick I have is after one or two questions, I always tell the person, hey, you're really good at this. Do you do a lot of video? And Jeffro, sometimes they are awful, right? Like sometimes people are just like, they're a nervous wreck. They're stuttering. They're not saying anything useful, but it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So if I can get you to relax and make you think, oh, I'm doing okay, man, you see like this huge weight come off their shoulders, and then they're able to just kind of settle into the zone. And eventually you creatively get back and ask those first couple questions again in a different way because they're probably unusable. But it's really just about getting true authenticity from people. And you really can't get that unless you get people to relax. That's my whole job. It used to be that the equipment, the technology, that was kind of like, oh, we need to hire a company because we don't have the technology to create these. Well, now you do, right? The cell phone in your pocket is better than a camera I bought for $7,000 10 years ago. That's crazy, right? The cell phone in your pocket is wonderful. So technology is no longer the barrier. It's storytelling.
Yeah, no, and I love how it's weird that you have to help people be themselves. But I think at the same time, it feels like a quiz. Like you mentioned, if you're holding that piece of paper, they now like feel like, oh no, I have to perform or else. And so it's just so interesting the way humans work,
It is, but it's, and I always try to make sure I have empathy for people because it's not, they're probably world class or close to it, whatever their particular specialty is. But man, that's not creating video, right? That's not being an interviewee. It's whatever else they do. So have empathy, make people relax, and just kind of make them the star of the show. If you tell them, how much you admire the work that they do, which I typically do, and let them shine, then they will.
What are some of the other things you do? You mentioned some things you do during the interview. What about beforehand that you do to help build confidence and prepare them to make sure everything goes smoothly?
Yeah, I love to go in and meet the team in person. The default is always virtual for these planning meetings that we have. We typically do one strategy meeting in advance, and the default is always virtual. But I really think if you can get face-to-face with people, it's a totally different level of familiarity. Before there's ever a question when somebody enters the room, and never an audience, right? So if we're interviewing, say, 8 people from a company or having 8 conversations, we'll bring them in one at a time and make sure that nobody can kind of be in the background or sit in the room and watch them other than myself and a couple members of my team, because nobody likes to perform in front of an audience that's not used to an audience. But I'll never have like a firm start. I don't want anybody ever saying action. That's ridiculous. If you hire a company to create video for you and your organization, and they're yelling action or using a slate, which is one of those clapboards, you have probably gone down the wrong road. Like that is not necessary, right? It's very easy to sync up different cameras just, with a single click of a mouse. You don't need to do that stuff anymore. All that does is freak people the hell out when you slap a clipboard right in front of their face. So I'm talking to people and probably asking my first question before I sit down in the chair. because I want them to get into it and then realize a couple minutes in, oh, maybe we started, right? Like there shouldn't be a firm start because that really freaks people out. It's not like, are you ready? Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And you see like the deer eyes come out, right? And they just kind of freeze up. So there's just all these little things that you can do to really make people relax. The most important thing is don't make it feel like an interview. Whatever you can do not to make it feel like an interview and make it feel more like a conversation between friends or between, familiar colleagues, that's really what you want.
What about, let's talk for a second about, let's say a business wants to create this video content, but they might struggle with deciding what to focus on. What types of videos do you recommend that they prioritize? And how do you make sure that those videos they're saying will actually help the business?
Yeah. So, we talked about a brand video earlier. I'm a huge believer that it's very, very helpful, regardless of the business size or industry, to have something on the homepage of the website that tells people who you are, not even necessarily what you do, but how you do what you do differently and why you do it. And focusing on your differentiators is important because chances are people found you because they kind of know what you do. And they're not there to find out what you do. They're there to find out how you do it differently than everybody else and help them make their decision. So from a pure marketing and branding standpoint, I think a homepage video is really important. It lives front and center. That is, if somebody has 90 seconds, 2 minutes to click play, they'll know who you are. They'll have a really good feel for who you are. Beyond that, I know you work with a lot of service companies and you help so many people in service industries. And sometimes we have multiple lines of service. Man, a video that explains that specific line of service is so helpful. We worked with a company recently. They had 6 different lines of service. So in addition to creating that brand video, in those conversations, we were able to really hone in on those 6 different service lines and explain it in a way and bring it to life in a way that it's very, very difficult to do with just words. Something else that I found that's really helpful, and if you go on our website, skybluecreative.com, we have a video FAQ page. You can do this one for free. Take out your cell phone, figure out what the 6 or 8 or 10 most commonly asked questions are of your organization, and just hit record. You can split this up among the team or just have 1 or 2 people do it and just answer the questions. Now, yeah, you can do it in text, but man, it's so much more impactful for people to be able to put a face to the business because people buy from people. And the other thing you can do with those videos is, say you're having a conversation with a prospect and you're like, hey, how does this work or how does that work? And you can respond with, you know what? We have a video that talks about that very thing. Here's a link. Take a look and let me know what questions you have. Number 1, it saves you from answering the same damn question over and over again. Number 2, it just adds a different level of sophistication to your process. It saves you a little bit of time, which we all need. And then finally, what I would say is you can talk about how great you are all day long. It's nothing compared to other people talking about how great you are. And so maybe get a couple of your clients on, right? So have your clients talk about the experience they've had with you. And again, don't make them read off a teleprompter. Don't tell them what to say. In fact, you probably shouldn't even be able to be the one sitting across from them because that's weird to say, tell me how great I am. Have somebody else do it. You don't need a ton of these. You need 1 or 2 or 3, and you already have more than your rivals or your competition. So grab a couple of those really well done testimonials that don't feel like infomercials. And I think that'll go a long way for you.
Yeah, those are all great tips. And I hope you guys at home are taking notes because some of these, like Pat said, you can just start doing this on your own right now. It makes a huge difference, makes you stand out. I also wanted to ask a practical question. So when you're filming these, you mentioned earlier how, you get a bunch of content, but you don't always use all of it, right? So are you filming with multiple cameras to do like a wide shot and a vertical shot so that some can be cut for social media, or how do you approach that?
It's a great question. Always for our team, it's at least 2 cameras, often 3. And why? Well, because if you have multiple cameras, number 1, it's a little bit more visually interesting to be able to punch in. You're able to cut around stumbles that way, and you're able to bridge thoughts. Sometimes, we'll have a video where someone says what sounds like a really cohesive, wonderful sentence, and people at home don't realize that the first half of it was from something that happened in minute 2, and the second half was something that happened in minute 10. But they just kind of piece together really well. And without multiple cameras, you're not able to do that unless you pop that person off screen. And so for us, it just creates a way better video all around to have multiple cameras.
Right. And just to explain that a little more for people who aren't familiar with editing, if you took the same video and cut out minutes 3 to 9, you're going to notice that I'm going to suddenly jump like this. And it's jarring, and people now feel like this is unnatural, and I'm feeling tricked somehow. Whereas if you cut to the side camera, it feels natural, like we're still continuing the same conversation, but now the context all makes sense and it's a smooth thing and it just flows naturally.
By the way, it's also a really great tool to take more pressure off people when they walk in the room. I always say, hey, look, there's multiple cameras. These aren't here to freak you out. It actually helps you because we're able to cut out any of your stumbles. We're able to bridge your thoughts. It's really kind of a cheat code for you. So this should take way more pressure off you. You do not have to be perfect. Just talk to me. And people are like, oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. Well, and this is all good advice for a business that maybe doesn't have a big budget to do the high value production, right? To pay for this. We don't want the slap words anyways, but are there any other practical tips for creating this video content if they're doing it in-house without hiring someone from outside?
Yeah. So in general, one thing is don't be afraid to get started, right? The only way you can get better at it is if you get started. And you can also, if you can't afford to bring a team in-house, I bet you can find an editor on Fiverr or someone from a local creative college. You can find someone to do posts for you for these things. So one thing I would always recommend to an organization is if you're going to create anything in-house, go on Amazon or wherever else you buy stuff and pick up, a simple cell phone tripod, pick up a ring light or some other light. A lot of times they sell the tripod ring light combinations, and find a good microphone that interfaces with your phone, whatever it is. You can probably buy all three of these accessories for like $100, and it really ups your production value so much. So just a little tiny investment can take that cell phone to the next level. And I would say a really great place to start internally, if you're not comfortable with the quality of the stuff that you're putting out, is use it for education and training purposes. Like organizations in service industries, you have rock stars. You have these people that are so good. They're your A+ players, right? Just follow them a little bit with a cell phone and document some of the things that they do really well. It's a great way to educate people, either people that are there for continuing education or people that you bring into the organization. Like, we have this default that we only want to educate from the top down. We want leaders to educate folks on the front line, but really the frontline folks are the experts. And so you find your best one or two, you document the things that they do every day, and you use that to help educate everyone else.
Yeah. I mean, it's so helpful for creating SOPs and just defining, training material for new hires. And you can, instead of handing somebody a playbook or handbook that's this thick, you can say, here's a list of 5 videos I want you to watch. And now, okay, they can do that. It feels more manageable in that sense. And even if you want both, hand it the video to an admin assistant and say, okay, transcribe this for me, put it into a document. Okay, now you got both, and people can watch or read, whichever they prefer.
Yeah, exactly. And, if you get really great stuff, there's so many apps now that can transcribe everything for you, right?
Exactly.
So, yeah, start with the video, let it transcribe it. You have both. You have text and video.
Can you share a specific success story from where this unscripted approach really impacted a business that you came in and made video content for?
Yeah, certainly. So I'll give one of the most fun ones, and you can go on YouTube at home and look up the TickPick, TickPick, Youper story, Yooper story. And so this company, TickPick, they're like StubHub, where they sell tickets on the secondhand market. And I heard this story from their CEO about how one of their customer service folks messed up. They didn't have the Upper Peninsula of Michigan on a map. And somebody from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan complained, and this person thought they were being funny. They said, well, hey, thanks for letting us know, but at least we have the important part of Michigan. And overnight, this was an overnight employee, overnight, their Facebook rating went from like a 4 point something to like a 1.2. And the UP kind of banded together, and they were just slamming this company. And this guy got this call first thing in the morning and said, hey, our reputation's in the tank. And he had to go on this crazy quest to try to gain their trust back of these folks and make it right. And he did. And it's a great story. Sometimes the best stories aren't the stories of our organizations. They're stories that come from our organizations, because stories about us, our brand video, are probably only going to be consumed by people that may want to use our services. But a great story is universal. And so I sat with this guy, just him and I, and had him talk through this story. Well, if you look now, I'm not sure where it's at, but last I looked, it was over 2 million views. And they hired Ric Flair for a more traditional commercial, which was very funny, right around the same time. And at one point, it may still, this video has more views than Ric Flair and this huge production, which cost a lot of money. Why? Because it was authentic and it was memorable and it was a real story. And so I would encourage everybody, tell your stories. Not only the story of your company, but the story that you tell when you're at the bar, and maybe you have to clean it up a little bit, but tell these great stories. Tell these human stories. If you screwed up, tell self-deprecating stories, right? Tell the story, your origin story of your company, where your family thought you had lost your mind and you were crazy and the company almost went out of business and somehow you saved it. Like, stories are so universal, and sometimes we feel like we have to only put our best foot forward and say we're the biggest this or the best at this, and that's not what people really want. What people really want is authenticity, and people love great stories. And so I would encourage everyone, just be yourself. And if you don't like the way that you look or sound on video, remember, it's not for you. So just never ever watch it, right? Like, you're not creating content to consume yourself. Sociopaths do that. It's not for you.
So that's a great example, and I'm going to go watch that after we finish here. So when you are talking about video for business, I think there's always a big focus on the ROI of that and how it converts for the business. And so I know you're talking about stories and getting people to watch it and engage with it, but where do you balance putting in calls to action and deciding if every single video needs to have an ROI or if it's just part of the overall package?
Yeah, and so this is really where we love partnering with either in-house marketing teams, or if there's an outsourced marketing team, if a company doesn't have one, that we're able to partner with and really kind of build out both sides of it, because we like to stay in our lane, and we are absolutely content first, last, and always. We don't pretend to be marketing companies. There's plenty of folks out there that their talent is creating videos and they say we're marketing companies, but they don't really know what the hell they're doing. And that doesn't do anybody any good, right? And so I think that the marketing folks should make that decision. I would also say, though, in my experience, that you don't have to sell something with every video, right? Really, if you are being authentic and you are telling people who you are and you're sharing great stories and you're getting your clients involved and letting them share their stories, you can very, very effectively indirectly sell. Because that can be awfully annoying if you're spamming people constantly with buy this, do that, right? And it's also, it doesn't also align with kind of my philosophy of genuine storytelling. Like, I think I'm much more of a soft approach than a hard sell approach. I certainly think there is nothing wrong with having a CTA in a video if you're providing some sort of value or telling a story. But if it's just straight sell, that's fine. That's typically just not the type of work that we create.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. And I think that's a good spot for us to wrap up today, because I think we've kind of covered the whole picture of, this is a better way to do it, especially if you don't want to spend a ton of money on this big production. You don't want to spend all the time trying to memorize lines and just have somebody who understands what you're trying to do, have a conversation, record it, and then let the editor do a lot of that work to piece it together in a way that's going to come across naturally and really tell that story that you want to tell. So thank you for joining me today, Pat. I always appreciate it when entrepreneurs like you are helping business owners simplify the various aspects of promoting and marketing their company, because there's so many options out there. This makes it feel less overwhelming and actually doable. So for those of you listening, take Pat's advice, start doing video this way. If you want to connect with Pat directly, his LinkedIn profile and website will be in the show notes as well if you want to connect with him. And Pat, I'll ask you one last question before we finish. Looking ahead to the future, how do you see video evolving as a storytelling tool for businesses? Yeah,
so I'm so glad you asked that. Someone asked the other day, do you think that AI is going to kill your business? And I said, I think it's going to kill the non-creative part of our business. But as long as people buy from people, and in service industries, I believe they certainly always will. One of the biggest differentiators that you will have is storytelling and authenticity. That's not going anywhere. There's not going to be a replacement for you. And so while people can create an avatar of you, they're always kind of a little off, right? Like, be yourself, tell your story, be self-deprecating when you can, be human. Don't always worry about telling people how you're the biggest this and you have this many customers. They just want to know if you can help them and they want to like and trust you. And so really cater your content around that and you'll be just fine.
Awesome. Well, I love that. That's great advice. Thanks again for being here, Pat. Thanks to all of you guys for listening. We said it before, we'll say it again, video's not going away. AI isn't going to do this job for you, so you got to do your part. Start making videos, and we'll see you back here next time. Take care. Thanks for tuning in to the Digital Dominance Podcast. This show is brought to you by FroBro.com. If you are a B2B service provider and you're ready to transform your website into a high-converting, lead-generating sales tool, go to FroBro.com/revive to learn more.